This is the Convo Lounge. Expression, exposure, experience.
Welcome to the Convo Lounge podcast with myself, Yandile Nuku, and I've also got what I call one of those people that I feel represent the idea of Botswana bred brilliance. In studio today, we've got Moitshepi Matsheng. She is the co-founder and is leading one of the largest, if not the largest, NGOs in the country called Youth Impact, formerly known as Young Love. And so we're just here to hear her journey in contributing to social entrepreneurship in Botswana. Not only that, we found some interesting insights when doing our research around unemployment, but also the relevance of young people to industry once they graduate from, higher academic institutions. We found out that, also foundational numeracy and literacy is a big deal. Khanzi, or most of the times, if we don't get it right in primary school, chances are the students' ability to learn and perform, even when they get to tertiary, or even when they get into the world of work, are very limited. And so these are some of the things that they're addressing as Youth Impact in Botswana. And that's why we have her on the Convo Lounge podcast. Moitshepi, welcome to the Convo Lounge.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I feel so honored to be here. Thank you so much, Yandi.
Yeah. Let's talk about Youth Impact. This journey started about 10 plus years ago. And I find the story quite interesting. I'm not going to say it out, but just share with us how the idea of Youth Impact came, which is formerly known as Young Love.
Awesome. So I co-founded Youth Impact organization with Noam Engrist we met initially in the year 2013. At that time, I was a law student at the University of Botswana, and he came in as a Fulbright scholar at the University of Botswana. And so we became mutual friends. We hung out a couple of times. During that period, a couple of key moments happened. One was that there was application for the D Price Education Challenge, which is a grant that provides, youthful organizations with seedling funding to work on proven interventions. So, Noam is very much a researcher. He's from a research background, and I was on my law pursuit. But we were so compelled to apply for the grant, which, the idea was that we're going to implement a program that was targeting and focused on the risk of older partners on young girls. So, sugar daddies. And when you're at the University of Botswana, this is much more prevalent than ever before, because after every end of month or even before, you see nice cars pulling up to the university and you see, girls, right, entertaining these older men. But at that time, how we initially started, there was a research paper, or an intervention that had worked in Kenya, which showed that, revealing the risk of older partners on young girls and sharing with them that information indeed reduced teenage pregnancy by 28%. So we took, that paper, and then we wanted to contextualize it to Botswana. So we applied for the grant, and then we got it. And then we tried to fundraise, locally with various banks and insurance companies. And at that time, we were advised to register an organization. So, and then we did. And then we did a big launch on March 22, 2014 of launching the Young Love organization. So all is to share that when we started, I had a partner, Noam, who we closely worked with on the vision of the organization, but also it just started as an idea. And I think, with entrepreneurs as well as, folks that are thinking about starting anything, right? It starts with an idea. And if you have someone, right, they can help you execute it, and also ensure that, you can actually realize, the dream. So we followed through. We started first, with a team of 4, people that were volunteering for many, many months. Now we are a team of over 300. We started, in a very small office space at the University of Botswana in Kupile. But now we have since, scaled our operations to over 10 countries. And I think one of the beauty thing about the organization is our mission has always remained the same. Our mission is to connect young people to proven life-changing information. So even when you look at the genesis of how we started our programming, it was very focused. We weren't going to do, other interventions that didn't fit within health and education. And we were very clear about that from the onset. So hence why I think has been really inspiring, but also has catalyzed our growth to really be mission focused and actually know what we are good at.
Let's talk about that key moment with it's Noam, right?
Yes.
He was part of the Fulbright exchange program. I mean, he could have met anyone really, but he met you. And I don't want to say it was by accident, but I see an element there of networking, but also cultural intelligence. It's not every day you meet someone and you're like, oh, let's go and apply for an opportunity. We'll talk to that. The idea of being culturally intelligent, but also being open to different partnerships or collaborations with people that are not necessarily from Botswana.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let me also just share that I've always been interested in everything.
Okay.
So what I mean is at the University of Botswana, I was in various clubs. I was very much a busybody. And I think one thing that is helpful is that to catalyze, your purpose, you have to find out different things that you're interested in. So in another world, if I had just sat at a classroom and went back home, I wouldn't have had opportunities to be in a club where, no one would know about it and then we'll become actual friends for that. So it does help you to go a little bit, more beyond, your scope or your comfort zone to try new things. Yeah. So I think the opportunity met me there. And one of the things that I used to do, especially if you're meeting someone who is not from Botswana, you want to share with them, right? A little bit more, beyond what makes Botswana special. And if you're excited and if you love your country, another person will be able to learn from you, but also find that exciting, right? Mm-hmm. So I think particularly when you are welcoming folks from different parts of the world, of course their countries are developed, right? But there's something special about Botswana. And that is what, I have always carried forward on, but also just to share and, the optimistic, qualities about our country. And I think that attracts people, right? Imagine if someone that country. You need to sell your country, right? And also love it, right? In its qualities and as well as the uniqueness of it. And I think if you lead with that positivity, folks will also be quite, endeared to be able to still also feel the same.
Let me put you on the spot. What makes Botswana special? Sell it.
Oh my gosh, many things. Okay. One of the things that I think is unique about Botswana is our peace and stability. And having, had the privilege of really spending time across many countries, you find that there's so many things that are happening, whereas, the roads are busy, there's a lot of, traffic jams, and so many, the crime rates are significantly high. But when you come to Botswana, you do feel a sense of bustle, but it's also quite peaceful as well as stable. Also, one of the things that's very unique about our country is that we really prioritize young people in the sense that when you look at, as well as, prioritize young people, but also have a safety net for a young person to grow quite adequately in the country. When you look at our our primary education up until our tertiary education, government is providing full funding for that, which is really quite special and quite unique to Botswana. When you look at, for example, in the economic side of things, mananeo a farologaneng a puso, go tswa ko limidi, go tswa ko Youth Development Fund, you are actually encouraging young people to be at the forefront of engaging in these benefits by government. So there's quite a number of array of special things about Botswana. The sunset is unique, and the animals and just the peace and tranquility. I can't overemphasize that. I feel like it has a different balance of wanting to be a country that is develops beyond its borders, but also at the same time, we are still trying to improve our country. So that nexus is actually quite an interesting one about our country. And just the people. I mean, you can see Motswana, who's from Southern Africa. We're quite special in many ways. Warm, loving, as well as quite generous. So that's how I would say, Botswana is.
There could be someone or a young person who doesn't know how to package what you've said. So, for example, our stability, our peace, our tranquility, how does that actually translate into value, for somebody who's not from Botswana? Why is it even important for us to mention that? What would you say?
I think it's important because it actually has driven a lot of our good governance as a country, but also to be known, right, by international bodies that Botswana is a country that has, peace and stability. And it also makes it much more possible to, work as someone from internationally coming to work in Botswana. You're not dealing with, let's say, for example, different, right, currency exchanges every now and there, or rapid inflation points, right? So it also helps on how the country affairs are run, and it also helps everyone, right, feel that they can operate in the country. So all is to share that it plays a significant role on how we are seen, nationally, but also more importantly, internationally. And of course, there are other areas that the country, can do better on. And please don't ask me what. But I do think in terms of where we sit relative to other African countries, we are really on the right track.
Hope you're finding this as insightful as I am. Gotta go for a quick break, and when we come back, we conclude on the second half of this conversation with Moitshepi Matsheng.
Have a business? Advertise with us. Reach us at info@theconvolounge.africa or +267 7651 992. Convo Lounge. Expression, exposure, experience.
If you just joined us in conversation, we're talking to Moitshepi Matsheng, talking all things young people that are making an impact in Botswana, but also somehow in the corners contributing towards solving this longitudinal challenge of unemployment in the country. So, Moitshepi, let's touch a little bit on what you're actually doing at Youth Impact. You've got this program called Teaching at the Right Level Initiative. Maybe touch on that and what difference you're trying to make in our education system.
Absolutely. So one of the core challenges in the education system in Botswana is that Botswana, performs very well as a country in terms of high access rates, having teachers, in every school. But there is a big challenge in quality learning. So what do we mean by quality learning? We mean that majority of the students are in class, but are falling behind. the grade level or the curriculum expectation. So what Teaching at the Right Level aims to address is the learning crisis that our country is in. I think, Yandile, you've seen our results from PSLE to JCE to BGCSE. They are declining year after year. But what we have found when we initially started Teaching at the Right Level, we found that 10% of the 5 students are at division. This means that majority, the 90%, are not at the curriculum expectation. So what Teaching at the Right Level aims to do is to group students according to their different learning abilities rather than by age or grade, and focusing on providing targeted instruction. So what we mean when you take maths, bana ba tla be ba le mo either addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. So you group students according to ngwana ha kae o tlhaloganya eng, and then you target teaching so that they can progress to other levels. So the program is, very much effective. It has worked on a number of countries in Ghana, Nigeria, Zambia. They're implementing it at national scale. It's one of the leading education interventions that shows, improving numeracy or learning loss in the child. So this program focuses on foundational skills. How do we work on foundational skills? Do we work maths or numeracy or literacy or reading? So, if a student can be able to read a simple word, how are they able to progress, or how are they able to interpret information as they, get into future years? So the idea around it is to build foundational skills as they are necessary to ensure a young person can access the world.
Mm. So you've obviously had some impact in the education sector. Let's talk about some of the strategic partnerships you've had to put in place to be able to scale across the country and even beyond the country. I know that you're working in close collaboration with the Ministry of Education here in Botswana, and I think that has been largely also, a catalyst to your expansion across the country. Let's talk about that. Here you are, you're a young person, you've got an organization 10 years in. I would imagine such a partnership doesn't just come overnight. Talk to us about the building blocks towards this, and maybe touch on some of the hurdles you've had to cross over.
Yeah, so I'm a firm believer that for any change to happen, it takes 10 years. And I strongly believe that. And here's why. When we initially started as an organization, we were welcomed, in partnership with the government because of our track record. But now, for example, where we sit, we've signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Education to be able to scale, to all primary schools in the country by the year 2026. So to date, we are in 8 out of 10 regions, but we have a long way to push. And tucked into that, one of our scale strategies is we're working with teachers to train them up to deliver our programs, but also the national service program participants, Matirelo Setšhaba. We train Matirelo Setšhaba who are placed in schools to deliver, our interventions. And one of the things that this provides and brings the Ministry of Youth along is to upskill them, but also to give them the necessary engagement whilst they're still at school level. We have found that those that have transitioned out from Tirelo Setšhaba, they are interested more in getting an education qualification. Some of them are absorbed within our organization, Youth Impact, but also some, pursue other, business initiatives and skills. And one of the things that's very important for us is to really build, that cohort of skills as it relates to young people. But of course, you can't do, this work without partnership in terms of resources. So we have really tapped into the international market for donors to be able to support a lot of our expansion work, but also really exciting that they can, see the organization through in its further years. And that has also been helpful. I think one of the things to tap into, a lot of organizations, as you may know, in Botswana struggle because of funding, but we have really leveraged our, a lot of the things that we do in terms of our mission. our mission is to really connect youth to proven life-saving information. So we are always on the constant, pursuit of results, of conducting, research to be able to back up our work, and as well as, know what actually is working. So, and I think that's something that's really needed as we move into the international philanthropic space, to actually say, do you have results, right, that can be able to speak about the impact of your program? And that's something that we've had initially from the beginning. We also have built a business development team. Okay. That's also an exciting thing that we did from the initial stages of the growth of organization. And the expectation is that all managers are fundraising. And that's how, we keep the lights on, but also, grow the team to where it is. We believe that every manager, or even if you're a senior leader, you should always constantly be thinking about how to fundraise, but also building the networks and partnerships to allow you, to get there. And one of the last things that I would share is that good people know other good people, right? Because I have Yandile in my network, and Yandile knows what I'm exactly about. In the rooms that I'm not present, I can only hope that Yandile can be able to champion me. So that's an approach that we have taken. Some of the challenges and hurdles, I think, particularly if you're working with government, you do require a lot of patience. And I've gotten that appreciation from working with government over the years, that, sometimes, right, for someone to understand your vision, but also for you to be able to move forward, you need to be able to listen to what they too want, but also what they are not communicating. And sometimes it's very helpful to be patient, to understand that everything has a process, and you also have to respect, that process. Also, I think, as being a social entrepreneur, is, we think a lot about team building, right? As I shared, we grew from a team of 4. Then I was a very young manager. I didn't have any tools and systems, to operate. But now, if you're managing a team of 300 all across the world, right? You think a lot about, what are some of the, leadership muscles you have to build over time? What are some of the tools and systems you have to put in place to actually build out a team? Because I believe for any great thing to happen, you need a team. And I'm a firm believer that the organization is the team. So, just my transition as a leader, when I was 20 years old to now I'm 30 years old, has been quite, remarkable to actually even think about what it took. So those are some of the challenges, building a team, finding, the right opportunities for the organization, but also being mission focused. And I'm going to emphasize this because I see that a lot of organizations, they start and then they're doing different projects, climate change, education, health, you name it. But what we have done at the organization, we said, what are we good at? We're good at information delivery, but also we're good at young people getting to deliver information to other young people, and also focus on health and education. So anything beyond there, even though we are asked all the time, we won't necessarily, take, right? Because we have to be focused as an organization, and other people see that we're focused, and that's why they want to work with us. Right now, we're in this privileged position where we can actually turn down, donor funding if it doesn't align to our mission, if it doesn't align to our timeline. And I think this is something, the NGO community in Botswana should develop, right? So we shouldn't be the ones chasing for funding. We should get to this shift and this point where people chase us because of what we are good at as organizations.
High five. I find it quite interesting that, you've initially spoke about your growth strategy. You attracted more international donor funding into Botswana. We've seen a scenario where, because we're labeled as an upper middle income economy, it's difficult to actually attract assistance into our country because the narrative or assumption is that we're good. How have you managed to maneuver that terrain?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you look at Botswana, you see it's a country with a good economy. So it's actually been very tough to fundraise, particularly for Botswana. But one of the things that is interesting interesting, particularly when you look at education, is that we are still behind in terms of quality learning in our country. We actually perform far worse than Kenya or Tanzania. So one of the things that is very interesting to do in those kind of scenarios is we lead with evidence of the problem. I think if folks, understand that in Botswana, our education learning levels are quite significantly low, but also when you look at our HIV statistics as well as new infections in the country, young people, are still dealing with that, right? So our country, in some sense, has done lots of, improvements, but also when you look at the reality on the ground, there's still a long way to go. So leading with evidence, leading with data is sometimes important to identify the problem, but also I think finding partners that will be able to understand your vision and as well as what you aim to do. And I think that always has been helpful. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier on is carving out your niche. We are an organization that bridges evidence and action together. And there are funders and donors that are supporting that mission, that are really, firm believers that you can't have one or the other, right? If you have too much, evidence and research, you never get to do anything. But if you do anything without backing it up by data, it then just, remains as a nice thing to do. So there are funders in this space that have, been with us since our journey started in 2014 to where we are now. We get a lot of, support from unrestricted funding, and that has, been able to carry us, through as an organization. And I think one of the things that's very unique, especially about, the donor world, is that they want to know what you are about, and hence why, building the brand of the organization is so important, but also sharing a lot, leading more with our programs, right? Being very program focused is so important because you actually want to show results, but also to actually change lives, right? At the end of the day. So we have a team that's just, really magnificent on thinking about our program design as well as our curriculum. And I think that also is a unique thing for an organization thinking about donor funding. And then just lastly to say that there's some technical aspects to it as well, in the sense that we are registered as a society in Botswana. We also had to register as a foundation in the US for us to be able to tap into the international funding, and many other things that I can share more about. So happy to always, chat with anyone just around how to tap into that international market, but there's also some technicalities to it. But one of the things that I can say is just, again, to remain, mission focused and really love what you do.
Let's close it off by saying this. Let's talk about social capital and your being intentional around it. You've had the Queen's Young Leaders Award that was given to you by Queen Elizabeth II while she was still alive. I think that's a cool privilege. And then, you were also in 2019 named as an Obama Leader for Africa, and I assume you're part of a capacity building program. Has this added any value to the work that you do? You have the potential for you to attract funding or attract the right talent to work with. Let's talk about the concept of social capital.
I think that concept is so important. And here is why. I believe your network is your net worth. And this is often said, quite loosely, but it really is meaningful. Right now, if I go to any African country, I know someone. And it's because of, the fellowships as well as the recognitions. So, for example, right now, if we are expanding into Namibia, I tap into my Obama Leader network. They know a teacher, they know a minister, they know someone who works in education, and they make that link. And that has also been so helpful in thinking about expansion, in thinking about opportunities when we advertise, for a role or a position. I share with, my network, and they're able, to be able to send recommendations of opportunities, of funding, and so forth. So it really does help, right? I can never, travel, in Africa and not have, someone that I know or a family. And that makes all the difference into learning about their cultures, but also into knowing that you have built, right, a strong link, for your work to be able to be carried forward. So absolutely.
Cool. Let's close it off by talking about how you bring all this global exposure that you have to trying to scale this to young people in Botswana, still around social capital. Your last words, and maybe touch on your role around the Botswana National Youth Council.
Absolutely. So I am on the mission as Moitshepi Matsheng to be able to have sustainable solutions that will be able to impact young people economically for their development. And I think tying it into being a social entrepreneur, also being the board chair of the Botswana National Youth Council, and many of these other accolades, I'm always on the mission to say that how can we get young Botswana impacted in a way such that it can change their lives, but also they can actually do better and realize that they ought to do their part in whichever corners they're in. And how do we do this? By bridging, the link between NGOs as well as working with government. But I think at the end of it all, we want results. We want things to actually happen. So that's always been my drive to say, what can I do in my small little Yana corner to make a difference and to bring results?
Thanks for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you so much, Yandi.
And that was it. I hope you agree with me now around my concept of Botswana bread brilliance. Conversation with Moitshepi Matsheng. Cheers.
This is the Convo Lounge. Expression, exposure, experience.